In Flint. Speaking of emergency management, turning now to Detroit Public Schools. No more sickouts this week, even though a judge denied DPS a restraining order to stop teachers from calling in sick to protest school conditions. And now we've got an even better idea of those poor conditions with a report from Detroit's building inspectors this week. The 11 schools inspected, including here at Spain Elementary School, have multiple violations, from rodent infestation to mold to heating and electrical issues. Cody had 30 violations, Osborne 19, Spain Elementary had 16. The city says in most cases the schools have 30 days to make those repairs. Inspections of all schools will be done in April. So, I mean, you can't open a newspaper, you can't watch television in this area without seeing Flint and DPS. So, in looking at Detroit Public Schools this week, yeah, we didn't have any teacher sickouts, but there's no injunction, against them. The judge ruled against DPS in terms of trying to stop the teachers, Nolan.
This district's swirling toward collapse. You talk about inspections in April. Also in April, they're going to be out of cash if the legislature doesn't move on these package of bills. My question is, over the last 20 years, the people of Detroit have gone into their pockets for $2 billion in bond issues to fix these schools.
More than that.
What? It's almost $3 billion, I think. What in the world happened to that money? Why do we have schools in this shape when the people voted $3 billion in good
Did they go
faith?
into buildings that have been maybe fixed and then closed?
I think they went
possible?
into people's pockets.
Well, I don't know if that's, I don't know how much that's true, but I was covering the district in 1994 for the Free Press when they went for $1.5 billion. I went back and read those stories again this week. There were no specific plans for what to do with it.
Most of it was squandered.
They came up with a dollar figure first and then backed into it with, well, we'll do this project, we'll do that project. By 1999, when the state came in first to try to manage the district because it was failing, one of the big problems was that $1.5 billion had been sold. A lot of the bonds had been sold. The money hadn't been spent yet, so they were paying interest on bonds without. The mismanagement is historically one of the big problems in this district.
But 5 years after that first bond issue, we did a investigative piece at the news, a hard look. The money was squandered in every possible way imagined.
There was a lot of
contracts went out to friends and family for windows that never got fixed, for this, that, and the other thing, and then the people gave them another $1.5 billion. And what's happened to that money?
All right. Well, so then, if you say that money's gone, go ahead, Steve.
I mean, one of the troubling narratives here is the idea that Detroit Public Schools were this sort of sterling institution before the state came in 1999, and like I said, as someone who covered the district before that, that's just not true. It was a really troubled district, even at that point, and we have been on a really long slide with regard to public schools. Now, it's not entirely on local officials. Here again, the state's strategy for funding public education, the state's strategy for dealing with abandonment and disinvestment in urban areas, that's part of what's playing out here. There hasn't been a strategy other than emergency management, and you've got to have a bigger plan.
Well, so now you have these buildings that have to get themselves back up to code in the next 30 days, and some of the structural things like roof damage and things like that. I mean, you're not going to be able to. They don't have the money to be able to do that. Yeah. So now, what's the next snowball, effect here of the city going to now aggressively target them in court if they're not in compliance in 30 days?
Or shut them down. I don't know what the city actually has as its end game. I don't think you're going to make some of these repairs by February, but the bigger issue here continues to be, are we going to fix this debt problem or let it overwhelm the whole state? You've got, this district will be out of cash in April unless some steps are put in place to deal with that debt. There's no alternative to the Snyder plan to spend $500 million to get this city out of debt and then pay it off through the bond process over the next 2 years.
This is my concern. You have two colossal problems in this state right now. You have Flint, which is taking up a lot of time, as well it should be, and now you have Detroit Public Schools. If you had even just one of these things, it would monopolize 90% of the governor's time and of legislative and power in saying, hey, we need to get this done. I need to lean on you here. But now he's got two things that he's got to be able to lean on people, and I'm afraid. I mean, can you really be able to give both of them the attention that they need?
Well, I mean, mean, the other problem lurking here is that this is an extremely weak governor. This is somebody who can't get the legislature to do the things that he wants them to do, and can't and won't stand up to them when they do things that he doesn't want them to do. I mean, the bills that he signed, the ridiculous bills he signed, saying, well, I didn't want you to do this, go back and do it a different way with regard to ballot access. I thought that was a signature move of somebody who just does not have the control that he should as the executive in the state. The people who are running things in Lansing
So
are
if you don't think he's
the
got
legislators.
control, and if he doesn't think that he can get the legislature to follow along, what's going to happen then, Nolan, in terms of DPS?
I think the legislature is going to have to follow along because it's going to cost them more if they don't than if they do. And at the end of the day, when they're faced with a choice of having to pay everything right now or paying it off over 20 years, they're going to hurt their own districts if they don't act.
But I also think that politically, some of the calculation is if I'm forced to do this, I can go home and run in the fall and say I didn't do it, they made me do it, and that was
Whatever it
gonna
takes,
be
they've
tough.
got to do it. If they don't do it, it's going to cost every district in the state.
Well, that's my point. I
And-
mean, being forced to do it politically may play better in some of these outstate
We'll
districts.
see.
Then
They're
we'll
going to be
see.
up against the gun in April.
And we're going to have to leave it there.